Hello everyone, Brad Macbeth here from The Simple Plan. Great to be with you again today. And today we're going to be looking at insuring your greatest asset, protecting your finances from disasters and the unexpected. And it's probably not what you think. So let's get right into it. I want to thank our sponsor, The Simple Plan Community. You can join The Simple Plan Community. There's no cost. It's at facebook.com/groups/Simple Plan Community. We are there always, posting regularly. If you would like a community of like-minded people to walk together with as you figure out what's the best way to make the most of your finances and to do the best for your family, then join with us there. Bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your discussions. We love to talk about all things related to finance and financial security. Join us there, facebook.com/plan groups or /groups/Simple Plan Community. It's right up there in your screen and it's in the comments. All right, let's dig right down into it. So here's what we're going to talk about. How we are going to protect our greatest asset. And it's not what you think. Most people, when they think of their greatest asset, they think of their house because that's the biggest asset that most people purchase and own that way. Or they perhaps think of cars, if they're thinking something more tangible material. Also, people can be thinking about things like their RSPs, tax-free savings accounts, that kind of thing. But it's really none of those things. Our greatest asset is our ability to earn an income. So for example, let's say that you're 30 years old and you're making, let's call it $80,000 a year, and you're going to work for another 35 years. Even without any raise, you're going to earn nearly $3 million. And with growth in your income, hopefully raises and improving yourself, all that, you're probably going to get closer to 4 or 5 million or even more. Now that is the biggest asset that most people have. And of course, it's the engine that makes our finances work for all of us, for our families, keeps them fed, keeps the roof over their head, keeps them secure. So we're going to take a look at, using this tool, we're going to take a look at how you can insure that great asset. Because what would happen if you were unable to earn your income? You know, most people are fairly convinced that they need life insurance because really when we're buying life insurance, basic like term life insurance for our family, we have kids or we have someone else, a spouse perhaps, who's dependent on our income, we get life insurance because that's what will take care of our families if we're no longer able there to do it. Well, disability insurance plays a similar role, except we're still alive. So maybe we're injured or we got sick, we're unable to work for a period or even permanently. And so disability insurance is what's going to take care of us. Now, the difference with disability insurance is it doesn't pay a single lump sum like life insurance does. It pays a monthly payment. It's designed to replace our income and the rate at which our income flows. Okay, so let's look at our illustration tool here about insuring your earnings. So when we think about our most valuable assets, so let's say that we have, let's call it, we'll go back to that $80,000 in income. And let's say we're going to do a little better. We're going to increase, it won't always come this way, but you get promotions and such, and maybe you're going to improve your income on average by 5% a year. Some years it'll only be by inflation rates, 2 or 3%, but other years you might have a bigger jump as you move to more responsibility, different jobs, new companies, that kind of thing. And so let's imagine we're 35 years old, so we're going to have, let's call it 30 working years ahead of us. All right, so yeah, there we are at our $2.7 million. And that's compared to the value of a home, which they're using $500,000. Let's pretend we're in Vancouver. or the Greater Toronto Area, though looks like some of those prices might be at least stalling. I don't know if they're going to go backwards, but slowing down a bit. So there you go. If we stopped working, we need a lump sum. Oh, this is an odd little duck here. Now this is just a lump sum. We would need a lump sum of $2.76 million to replace our income to provide the equivalent salary of $80,000 a year over the next 30 years. Let me just reload this page, see if we can get it to display better. So if you click that link in the comments there, this is the page that you're going to get to. Oh, okay, well, it's not really any better. If you see this page, I'm hoping it will display better for you. Maybe we'll try a different browser here. Yeah, that looks a little better. All right, let's try this one. See if that helps us out. Okay. So what we were saying 80,000, and we were saying 5%, and we were going with 30 years. All right. So you're going to earn, over that period, you're going to earn $5.3 million. Now, you only need 2.76 because you can grow that money at the same time you're consuming it over the 30 years to replace your income. So you would need that much money to replace $80,000 per year over the next 30 years with a 5% increase. Okay, so that's a starting point. We know that we need insurance or disability insurance that's going to cover that. Now, if you buy disability insurance, that is not how it's kind of calibrated. Instead, we look at it as a percentage of our monthly income. It's going to pay us a percentage of our monthly income, usually 60% or 2/3, one of those two numbers, or maybe between those numbers. So that's 60% to 66.67% of our monthly income. Now, why is that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is it costs money to go to work. Usually it's been a little different the last couple of years, but for most of us, there's a cost to going to work. The cost is in clothing, it might be in food or coffee or whatever we buy when we're out. It's in commuting to get there, all that kind of thing. And so we don't need to cover that if we're unable to work. But the other thing that that is a part of disability insurance is if we, the individual, are paying the premiums, which you'll notice that's what you're doing for most people if you have disability insurance through your workplace. If we're paying the premiums out of our own money, then the benefits we receive if we collect disability insurance are not taxable. So that's why 60 to 66.67% is adequate to replace everything we would need to replace our employment income. Now, there's a few other factors. Generally speaking, disability income doesn't come into effect immediately if we're unable to go to work. So if I sprain my ankle and can't go to work for 4 days, I'm not going to collect on the disability insurance. Usually there is an elimination or a waiting period. Can be as low as 30 days, 60 days. Usually I like to set it at minimum to 90 or maybe 120 or even 180 days. So we're going to self-fund for those periods. And depending on your situation, you may have funding from other sources. So for example, if you, again, are working with a benefits plan, there may be short-term disability income benefits as well. If you are eligible for employment insurance, there is a 16-week benefit that gets paid by employment insurance if you're unable to work for physical reasons. And, or better yet, we can self-insure either for part of that or all of it. And the reason we want to do that is because the longer the waiting period, the less the cost is going to be for the disability insurance coverage. So if we can put a waiting period in there of 6 months, we're going to pay a lower premium than if we only had a 30 or 60 or even a 90-day waiting period. So it helps to keep the cost down. Now, the other thing that we generally get to select is what length of time is the benefit going to get paid for? Is it going to get paid for 2 years? These are the three most typical, 2 years, or perhaps 5 years, or perhaps to your age 65. Now, of course, if it's only being paid for 2 or 5 years, you need to have a plan in place for what's going to happen if you're disabled permanently. If you get the coverage so that it goes to age 65, then of course you're covered until what would have been considered your normal retirement period. Now, there's lots of other different factors in disability insurance. It's a sophisticated product. So I'm not trying to cover all the ins and outs of disability insurance here. You can find out more if you want to give us a ring or set up a time. We're happy to discuss all the ins and outs of it with you for your specific situation. Because with all the different options on disability insurance, it really is a product that gets well customized to your situation. By the way, depending on what you do for work, that also affects the cost of premiums. So I like to say, if you're an underwater demolitions expert, well, you're most likely not going to qualify for disability coverage, but if you did, it would be very expensive. Whereas if you are someone who does white-collar work at a desk in a professional environment, the premiums are lower, primarily because you're less likely to be injured at work. Okay, so we've seen, gotten some ballpark ideas of what coverage might look like. So why do we think that we need coverage? Well, let's look at some of these probabilities. 6.2 million Canadians over the age of 15 live with one or more disabilities. And so the definition of a disability is something that physically prevents you from being able to carry out the normal duties of your work. So 1 in 5 of the Canadian population aged 15 years or over, about 6.2 million, had one or more disabilities. Now, many of those are temporary. They prevented them from working, but they may have been only a temporary setback. Here's the typical or the most common causes of disability. Disabilities related to pain, that's 15%. Related to flexibility, 10%. To mobility, that's another 10%. And to mental health is 7%. Those are the 4 most common factors for disability among Canadians 15 years and older. Now, what we can see here is that the likelihood of disability increases with age. So 15 to 24 years old, it's less likely than when we're in our 65 to 74 years. Now, bear in mind for disability insurance coverage, that is what's going to replace your work wages, that really only goes up to age 65. So we're really most concerned about these 3 categories here. We have other products, long-term care, different types of things that can help out when we have disabilities in our later years. But during our working years, long-term disability coverage is what will keep us with a roof over our head and food on our table for us and our family, without our lifestyles being severely compromised while we're in that disability period. So you'll see that 15 to 24 years old, 10% of males, 15% of females. Going up, you get into the 45 to 64-year-old age bracket, you get 23% for men, 25% for women. Now, why is that? Well, I would venture that it's because we're more prone to disease the longer we age. So if we get a disease that prevents us from working for a period or permanently, that's more likely to happen or to be affecting us to that extent when we are that old. And the other thing is people with disabilities are less likely to be employed. 59% of people with disabilities versus 80% of people without disabilities who have employment. With the level of severity increasing, as you'd expect, the likelihood of being employed diminishes as well. Okay, so what can we do about that? Well, here's the things that people usually think about when they look at how would I manage. Now the thing is, most people don't ask themselves these questions. So that's what I do. I love to ask people these questions because it's very important to take care of yourself and your family financially. So when I ask people, well, what would happen if you became disabled? They're like, well, I've got some money saved, but that really can only cover a limited period of time. As we saw, if we're disabled and unable to work permanently, the numbers will add up very, very quickly. For someone with 30 years of work ahead of them, at $5 million of lost income. So when you think about that, what would $5 million of lost income to your family mean? To your spouse, to the lifestyle you're able to maintain together, to being able to even be taken care of at home if you had a disability, and what kind of a burden that would be putting on your family. And then finally, how is that going to generationally affect the life of your children if your family's income is that severely diminished for that long a period? Now, retirement savings, well, I have an RSP. It's like, well, that's true enough. The challenge with that is, if that's what you do with your retirement savings, then when it comes to retirement time, there's not going to be any money to take care of you there. And what you've really done then is just kick the can down the road. We may think we can survive on our spouse or partner's income. Well, again, that might be a possibility if they have a really good income. The problem there, though, is they may well need to or want to take time off to help care for you, or to take up some of the duties in your family that you may no longer be able to perform. Selling assets. A lot of people think they can sell their assets. So your house, probably. And again, that's the question. Is that really the type of impact you want to have be putting at risk for your family? Borrowing money, well, maybe, but then what capacity are you going to have to pay it back? You're assuming that you're going to be able to get back to the workplace and catch up and take care of these things. And that goes especially true for retirement savings as well. Even if you eat down your retirement savings for a few years and then try to build it back up, the lost momentum in the growth of your retirement savings in that period of time, you won't recover that before you get to retirement. So you're borrowing from your future, from your retirement when doing that. Employment insurance, as we mentioned, only covers about 16 weeks. Workers' compensation, or WorkSafe, as it's called here in my province. Well, a couple of things there. Definitely, you may get a pension there. You may get, or payments. But you're only covered if that injury happened on the job. So if you went skiing, or you have cancer, so if you went skiing and injured yourself, or you have cancer, and by the way, the three biggest illnesses that render people in difficulty are cancer, heart disease, and stroke. So very common. We all know people who've had these. So none of those are covered by WorkSafe unless it can be shown that your cancer, for example, were caused by your actual workplace. And just as you note there, the Toronto Star reports that 90% of mental health claims are denied by WorkSafe. Canada Pension Plan does offer a disability benefit, but it's a minimum of $524 a month and a maximum of $1457 a month. So it's not, if we were to use that 60% factor, that maximum of $1,500 a month would, be fine if you had a $2,500 a month job, if your earnings were $2,500 a month. But that's not a very significant income. So the Canada Pension Plan disability benefit also has a high threshold to qualify, but if you do qualify for it, it still pays you just a maximum of up to $1,500 a month. Now, group long-term disability insurance through your employer can be an excellent first layer of protection, and you might want to review that. if you have it at work, in fact, I would strongly urge you, if you're not sure, check out your group program and make sure you have that disability insurance coverage and find out what it covers you for, what the disqualification periods are, or waiting periods, and also what length of time. Because what you may not know is perhaps you've got disability coverage at work, but the issue with it is it only covers for 2 years. Well, if that's the case, then you can buy supplemental disability insurance that you own personally and insure for the longer period up to age 65. So your workplace would cover you to age, or for the first 2 years, but yours would then kick in and cover you to age 65. Or perhaps yours only covers for 50% and you would prefer to have that 65 or 67%. One other thing to think about with group disability insurance is just to be sure that you're in a workplace environment where you're going to continue working there for long periods of time, or in the same industry and other companies offer the same benefit. Because if you leave the company, of course, you'll no longer have that long-term disability insurance. And it's possible, especially as we get older, that either we're no longer able to qualify, because qualifying for disability insurance has a higher threshold than just qualifying for life insurance, for the very reason that we're more likely to be disabled than we are likely to die prematurely. So you may want to consider personal disability insurance as something to help strengthen your portfolio of financial security, or to even replace the existing coverage. And that's definitely a possibility for some, because many people now have group coverage where they could take less of the benefit, like subscribe to fewer of the benefits through the workplace, take more cash, and then use that cash to buy their own disability life insurance or disability insurance, which then is portable. You have that with you, it's on you wherever you go. Okay, so just to kind of sum it up, your power to earn an income really is most people's single greatest asset. And disability insurance is a sophisticated product. It's very much customized to the individual circumstances, has to do with the structure of your family, very primarily has to do with the nature of the work that you do. And there are many different ways that you can configure it. So the best thing you can do if you're not sure is to first check if you do have disability insurance through your workplace. And when you've figured that out, or if you're not able to figure it out, book an appointment. We'd love to spend 15 minutes with you. We can let you know what your options might be, whether, do an evaluation, are you in a good situation? Because many are, and they're not aware of it, but some aren't. And so it's always really good to know exactly what situation you're in with respect to these different types of financial security. Because I want to give you some perspective on one thing that very commonly happens. And it's this. We end up in a situation where somebody is ill or injured, their income is diminished or gone, and family resources get exhausted dealing with that. And so as the folks age, it becomes very difficult to manage their lives, because the money that they had carefully set aside for retirement to take care of themselves is gone, because it was needed to take care of themselves while they'd expected that they would be earning an income. So you've got a double disadvantage there, right? You thought you'd be earning an income, and so your savings would be going up. But not only were you not earning an income and your savings going up, the loss of your income plus expenses that can be associated with having your disability have drained the family coffers. And so whereas you were trying to take the best care of your family, and especially not become a burden to your family and your children later in life, you've had to exhaust your finances, and now what you had really hoped to avoid, or perhaps very significantly feared for your financial future in your old age, has come upon you. And so just to give you some perspective, disability coverage can start as low as, if you're young, $30 to $35 a month. If we're older or we have higher incomes, it goes up from there. But you can get, for many of us who are reasonably healthy and not working in really hazardous work can get disability coverage for well under $100 a month. And it's protection that's going to protect you. It's protecting your family and your finances from the likelihood of being unable to work for a period of time. And as we've seen, that likelihood is much higher than the likelihood that we will die prematurely, or the likelihood that we'll have a house fire, or the likelihood that we'll have a serious car accident. I mean, many of us have car accidents. You know, you bump this, you bang that, and you end up not making your insurance claim because you've got deductible and it's not worth it. But as soon as we're unable to work for any period of time, after that 16 weeks, it really starts to add up quickly. So we'd love to help you out if you want to review where you're at on your finances, your disability coverage, that kind of thing. Book an appointment. You can go right to our calendar there. That's at go.getthesimpleplan.com/calendar-new. We'll put that in the comments there. Flash it up on your screen as well. And you can book a time, 15 minutes. There's no obligation. We'll just chat with you. We should be able to come up with a quote for you at that point as well and say, well, here's what you'd be looking at. To really dig into it takes us a couple of days because of the sophistication of the disability product. But we just get a bit of information from you and help you to figure out what your options are and which direction you might want to go. So I'm sure that stirred some thoughts. I hope it's been helpful for you today, and want to encourage you again to join the Simple Plan community. We talk about all these topics and more. Bring your individual questions, your comments, your personal stories of how you're making it work, how you're succeeding with your finances. Come join us for free at facebook.com/groups/Simple Plan community. And just one more thing, we are moving into a 7-week series coming up that we're very excited about. It's all about building yourself a retirement plan, because most people are only thinking very one-dimensionally when they're thinking about planning for retirement. And all they're thinking about is the accumulation. Setting money aside. They may not even be thinking about how much should I be setting aside, and they're often mostly not thinking about how should I be setting that aside, exactly where. Because when retirement time comes, those choices that you're going to have made will have a profound impact on things like your taxation, your standard of living, how much of your income is guaranteed, all those things. So we're going to go through a 7-week series that's going to look at all the different steps in building yourself a comprehensive retirement strategy so you can be certain that when you get to that time in life, everything's going to be exactly as you'd hoped. We want you to, don't worry, retire happy. And that's what we're calling this 7-week series. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Join us. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the alarm. Join all these things, the alerts, because you'll get notifications about when we're doing these things all the time. So Brad Macbeth here. Thank you very much for the Simple Plan, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.